Welcome to Life in LA, a look at people and places in Lower Arkansas, our LA. Lower Arkansas is made up of the 15 southernmost counties in the state. Join us each week as we talk to some of the people who make this part of the world such an interesting place to live. And now, let's join Life in LA with our host, Steve Ford.
I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time because it's with a guy that I worked with when I worked in radio years and years ago. I am talking to Dan Gregory at Magnolia Radio. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve. It seems like just yesterday, doesn't it?
I know. We've sat here and visited a little bit, and we've kind of covered a lot of years in a hurry.
Yeah.
And you kind of pick up where you leave off, don't you?
It was a lot of, I still think of you as, one of my old employees. And It's just that the years have separated us. But when, you, me, Ken Sibley.
Oh, man, those were some
back
days.
in the day. How many years ago was that?
Ooh, gosh.
That was.
I left in about 82. So probably I worked here from like 79, 80, and 81, somewhere roughly in that.
August the 28th, I will have been on the air in Magnolia 45 years.
45 years.
So I knew you were right there back toward the beginning of that.
Wow. We're going to talk about some of the people you've worked with and all of that, but don't let me get ahead of myself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from and your family and when you came to Magnolia.
That was 1978, August of 78 when I moved here. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Missouri, in kind of east central Missouri between St. Louis and Columbia, over on that side of the state, and didn't know of anything good coming from Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
I worked with some former Arkansans.
Well, that would be enough to
at a factory, and I said, okay. When the opportunity came to move to Arkansas, I said, I don't know if I want to work with you, but I moved. So I came down here for an interview. That was back in 78, and then I moved here and got on the air, planned to be here short time, get a little experience in radio, and
move
off somewhere else. Yeah. And one thing led to another, and here I am 45 years later. Yeah.
But Dan, can I say this? Dan Gregory is not your real name, is it?
You're letting the cat out of the bag. No. Dan Gregory is not my real name.
Dan Gregory is not your real name.
Well, part of it is my real name. Gregory is my real middle name.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll get to that a bit later on. Let's put it that way. Okay. We'll get to that a bit later on. Maybe you'll let the cat out of the bag for those who've never, who don't know that for sure. But, I was surprised to read. I was reading your biography. Did you know you had a biography?
I'd forgotten now that I even had a biography.
Yeah, it's pretty complete.
I haven't done a job resume in so many years. I didn't know that.
Oh, that's kind of nice, isn't it? You don't have to be shopping.
I guess that's nice, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But it said that you had begun your studies in law enforcement.
I did.
You want to be a cop? Was that it, or
FBI?
Did.
Well, what I knew was I went to school and I graduated and I started working in a factory, and it didn't take me long to figure out I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. So I had an interest in law enforcement and started taking some classes at a junior college and did some ride-arounds with the county cops and applied to the Missouri State Police. And about the time that I made the change and committed to radio, that's when the call came from the Missouri State Police, and I said, well, I think I've changed direction. So I had gone on to that. I went to a one way that I know that radio advertising works is because I heard the ad for this broadcasting school in St. Louis on the radio, and I called them, and it
worked. Radio advertising still works.
They sucked me in anyway.
Yeah.
So from then on,
so you actually went to school for radio broadcast?
Yeah, in St. Louis for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I
still was working at the factory, but I was also going to school.
Did you interview any place else besides Magnolia?
I didn't. This was my first. I came into school one night and they said, "We've got a job offer down in Arkansas." And I said, "Arkansas? I'm not going to Arkansas." This was pre-cell phone days, so I knew it was in Arkansas. And they said
it was a long distance call.
They said it's down by the border.
Mm-hmm.
misleading me to believe the northern border,
Oh,
but it was actually close to the southern border. But once I got down here and talked to Bill Bigley and Bill Merrell, and they hired me. I've gone back years after that to listen to my audition tape, and why they hired me on that audition tape, I have no idea. But they did, and I stayed, and I'm still here.
Some of those names you just mentioned, a lot of folks will not even recognize the name Bill Bigley or Bill Merrell. I was hired for the sales slot that Bill Merrell had previously had before his untimely death, and Bill Bigley was the station owner, I guess, at the time. I think he started the radio station back in the early days with a group of Magnolia citizens and
some El Dorado folks,
and eventually wound up with, I think, full ownership of it.
Right. So he was owner when I was hired. Bill Merrill's actually the guy that showed me around town,
kind of the station
and
operator,
hired
manager.
me. I think it was less than a year after I started that he passed away in that car accident, and then you came along. So I worked at least a couple of years with you.
I applied for a job as an advertising salesperson, and when Bigley told me I got the job, he said, "By the way, you'll be on the air from 6 to 9." I had no idea what I had signed into, but at the time, Ken Sibley and I had that morning show, and that just was a very special time of my life. Good friend, and it was a great time to be in radio.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great time, and you couldn't have had a better person to teach you about radio. I went to school, but I didn't learn anything about small town radio. What is involved and all of that. They were great teachers for that.
The format back then, of course. The other thing that's changed, the AM station was what everybody listened to.
Yep.
Back in the 70s, they'd get up and everybody in town seemingly would turn on the radio early in the morning. They wanted to hear the school menus. They wanted to hear the local news, who had died, and birthdays.
And who was in the hospital.
Yes.
We did that.
We could read the list of hospital.
We get our Stevens news from Margie Wagnon.
And the Stamps news from Gladys Martin Oglesby.
And she'd tell a snake story every now and then. And
man.
Those were the good old days of radio there,
Yeah, it was almost like Green Acres on the air or something. And it was a kind of a down-home atmosphere to it. And that was primarily on AM. I don't remember, the FM hadn't really become popular until about the time I was leaving. It was becoming, because the quality is so much better on the FM.
There wasn't. I don't think Mr. Bigley ever believed. He thought, okay, it's a fad. That's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to buy it up before somebody else buys it. So he controlled that frequency and didn't really do anything with it.
And he had like 1,000-watt frequency at 107.
100,000.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That was literally the voice of.
Yeah, it covered a large territory at 107.9.
That was a smart. I don't know if it was a smart investment. It was a lucrative investment for him.
Yeah, because it turned into well, probably wasn't long after that we had made the change, and all of the advancements in radio kind of made a lot of that possible too.
So what did you do when you first came to work here? What was your?
I was just on the air. I was an on-the-air guy. Back in those days, there was nothing automated. It was all live. There had to be somebody live in the booth, either talking on the microphone, playing commercials, or playing records, which we actually had the old.
You had two turntables.
Vinyl's coming back now.
That's what I hear.
Back in those days, that was all we had. Vinyl, and it was just really CDs. They hadn't come along yet. Cassettes really hadn't come along big yet. We had tapes. We had reel-to-reel tapes, and we had cart tapes.
The commercials were all on. It looked like an 8-track tape deal, but it was a cart, I guess they called it. And, working that morning shift was kind of a challenge. You had to pre-record. You had to turn on a reel recorder to get the ARN news that you'd play back on the hour, and you had to watch the clock all the time. And
you had to hope that your stack of carts for the commercials didn't fall over.
Ooh,
that happened on numerous occasions.
And then you're just scrambling looking for
and it's hard to reach down underneath and pick it up when you're trying to talk on the microphone's up here and the cart's down there. What am I going to do?
The one thing I learned was you never chuckled while you're reading the obituaries.
Yeah, you don't do that. That's not good.
No telling how many funny moments have gone by in radio. You used to do a program called The Friendly Show.
I did.
What was that
people
like?
Probably forgot that
some people never. Yeah.
I did that in the very beginning.
Tell us what The Friendly Show was for those who may never.
The Friendly Show. I always wondered why it was called The Friendly Show, and I actually, I always felt it put too much pressure on me. I'm thinking, so I've got to be friendly. I got to be friendly for this hour.
Yeah.
For a whole hour, I got to be friendly. I don't know if I can do that. But so it was basically it was a swap shop. People buying and selling, and they would call in, and you had to also be the Friendly Show police because we had
there
rules.
Would be some who would try to slip in. If it was an item over a certain amount,
200, I think.
They were supposed to purchase a commercial.
A paid item, yes, sir.
A paid item. That's right. The paid. You had to be the paid item
paid
police.
Portion of the Friendly Show.
I had forgotten about that.
So if somebody tried to slip in on a phone call,
It's $199. You want more than that. You know you do.
It wasn't beyond me to call them out on the air either. So it kind of I think Ken may have figured at that point, okay, Dan doing a show called The Friendly Show.
That didn't work.
This just doesn't work. So
I remember.
I moved on, and we brought somebody else in to do The Friendly Show.
Yeah, I remember Charlie T used to do it. For anybody that remembers Charlie T, some of the story was told that somebody called him up, and I think he got into an argument with them on the air, and they basically told him where to go, and he told them, same to you. And Ken said, we're going to have to change the name. Yeah. We can't keep calling it The Friendly Show if you're cursing each other.
He may have been the same as me. He felt, okay, that's too much pressure to be calling my show The Friendly Show.
Especially in the morning. You're not a morning person.
No, I'm not. I hated getting up. I had to come in at work at 6 o'clock I didn't at first because Ken was still on the air. Ken and you at one point were doing the morning shift. So I came in, 8, 9 o'clock?
You picked it up at 9. I was on the air
until the show was at 9,
Bill Hoagland, I believe, took my place, and I guess he and Ken kept doing the morning show.
Yeah, then eventually, when Ken got off the air, I moved up to having to come in at 6 o'clock, and I fought it hard because I don't like being up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be friendly at 6 o'clock in the morning, still to this day.
You'd had to.
I got an excuse now.
You remember that? You remember the morning routine? You'd have to come in, unlock the door, turn on the coffee pot, pull the news off of the teletype, and then power on the transmitter.
Yes,
the AM had to be powered on.
Now we're on 24 hours. Like AM, AM was a daytimer, so you had to turn it off. At sunset, you turned it off. But now, at sunset, you just go to a lower power. And so it's still on 24 hours. And plus, at that time, there had to be a person in the studio.
Oh, that's
so
right.
So you couldn't pay to have somebody in there for 24 because we didn't have any way to automate it at that point. Or now it's all digital. So it's a computer. It's a computer program, and it'll run, plays music and all that. So you can run it 24 hours. You don't have to have a person in the studio anymore. But
the story was told of another disc jockey there at night that was known to slip out to his car for an adult beverage while the record was playing. The story was told he let the door close behind him and locked himself out with an LP on. It wasn't long till the record got to the end and it was just skipping, and somebody called and had to tell Mr. Bigley he needed to get down to the station. A lot of fun stories like that through the years, weren't there?
So I'm guessing he must have forgot his key that day.
He had left his key on the desk or something. He just stepped out for a moment and forgot that the door locks behind him. Yeah. That was back when the station was down on South Jackson, across from Magnolia skyscrapers there.
Across from the McAllister and the Capri, I guess is whatever it's called now.
Man, the people you must have worked with in all those times. Bigley, Ken Sibley, Bill Hoagland.
Over the years, gosh, I've worked with a lot of people. And then after Noel Mark bought us in 2005, there's a lot more people that I have worked with, and I meet a lot of them on the street now. The ones that are still with us, some are not with us anymore, but I'll meet them on the street and say, "Hey, you!"
Oh yeah.
Hey,
you know, for years and years, Ira Darty was the secretary there.
Yeah,
and
Jack, and Brian Doherty's grandmother, Jack Doherty's mother.
I ran into her son in Texarkana recently. He said she's still driving, still lives in Oklahoma, still goes to church up there. Ira Darty, Billy Joe Darty's, and
she always wanted to go
Jack's,
to Hawaii, and I think Billy Joe finally took her. She got to go to Hawaii.
Oh yeah,
years ago.
Yeah. The radio station was connected with the Columbia County Fair and Livestock Show too a lot. She sold a lot of. I remember hearing some of the ads that she sold, but then I
think Mr. Bigley was involved with that, wasn't he?
I think that must have been it, because he brought in the chief talent for the talent show. I remember one year I got to introduce Ace Cannon. That was my claim to fame during that time.
He was a regular for a lot of years.
Yeah. What were some of his songs? Yakety Sax and I don't know what all.
But I'm not sure.
They packed him in for that.
Tough.
Tough by Ace Cannon.
I think that was his big hit.
Yeah, I think so. The format of radio back then, we would come in, open up at 6. I'd have the national news, state news, local news. We'd do the farm report. We would call up the local weather observer to get the rainfall for the last. Right. Did you ever do that?
I did. Dr. John Atterbury.
Dr. Atterbury.
When I was doing it, I think there was one before him and another after.
Ed Smith, I think, filled in some for him. I can't remember who all some of them were more talkative than others. And then, I believe it was like 6:25. We had a program with the county agent.
Yes, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, we had a lot of local folks that would come in and visit, or do that, or do it on the phone, one or the other.
Yeah.
Dr. Atterbury used to do it just on the phone.
Dial him up, and he'd tell you how much. Yeah. We used to call it from the observation station out there on Dry Hill, because you'd have just a gully washer, and he'd say, "Yeah, we got just a trace out here." It never seemed to jive with what everybody else got. Boy, we got the rain yesterday, though, didn't we?
Tell a quick Dr. John story. We talked a lot, and I told him this was before I ever had a boat or anything. And man, I sure love to fish. Oh yeah, well, you can come on out and come on out here and fish on some of these ponds out here. He was at SAU, and so I'm out there fishing one day, and there's this guy on the other side of the pond, kind of walking around, and he is yelling at me that I had no business being there, and I needed to be out of there, and it got a little heated back and forth, and finally, by the time he came around, then we found out who each other was, and so there was a lot of eating crow at that point, and we were, I'm so sorry, but
So speaking of ponds or lakes, you've been involved with Lake Columbia.
I have, since almost since the beginning. I mean, I followed it because I always loved to fish, so I was really interested when that all came about, and so I followed it a lot. Matter of fact, I had a new camera that I ruined taking pictures of the construction process, all the dust out there where they were doing the dirt moving, and it got inside my 35 millimeter camera and just ruined it basically. Yeah. But I took a lot of pictures and went out there. This when I think that's when Bill Hoagland was here. We were out there walking around checking it out. But but I wasn't on the board at the beginning, but I think by the time that all got settled in, then I
fished out there enough they put you on the board.
I finished out the term of one of the original guys, and then and now I can't get off. I'm still there.
You do such a good job.
Still there. I hate to say that. Now they're going to people will come. Well, people know that I'm on there.
Yeah, I think you kind of hinted you didn't like getting up at 6 and being an early morning person. I think sports would be more your.
Of course, fishing you had to get up even before that.
Well, that is correct. I guess you could fish anytime, but
then I get home and sleep the rest of the day, so it's not too bad on a Saturday.
So how'd you get started doing sports?
That was right toward the beginning too, because you mentioned Ira Darty. Ira Darty sold local sponsorships for boys. It was just boys club, wasn't boys and girls club back then. We weren't politically correct back in the day.
Oh yeah.
There were girls sports going on, but we actually broadcast a game during the baseball and softball season at the boys club. We broadcast a game each day, Monday through Friday. We picked a game and we would do that game on the radio. I had never done sports in my life. Always wanted to do sports. I grew up listening to Jack Buck and Harry Carey and all these guys doing Cardinal baseball in St. Louis on KMOX, and we were an affiliate.
We carried them, didn't we?
We were a Cardinal affiliate here at that point. That was another reason that I moved here, because I said, well, if you got the Cardinals, it's okay, I'll take the job.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so I thought, man, that would be neat to do that. So when the opportunity came around to do that, I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. So I did it, and Buddy Knowles, who was the head umpire at the boys club, I don't feel like calling it boys club now, but it was sometimes. Yeah, it was called boys club in those days, not boys and girls club. But anyway, so Buddy Knowles was the head umpire, and a lot of times while I was doing my game, after he had all of his umpire assignments made, he would sit in his truck and listen to my broadcast. And so Buddy Knowles would critique me. And so I took a lot of it to heart. I knew Buddy knew all there was to know about baseball and all of that. So that got me started, and I started doing some, then eventually picked up some started doing Magnolia games, Magnolia basketball, and then as we went along, because Ken Sibley had done Magnolia football and basketball and SAU football and basketball, and finally he got to the point where, being a married man with kids, he wanted to cut back.
Were you with Ken on that?
That's the reason I guess I never was a married man, because I never
didn't have time for it. Yeah. Gone nights. Were you with Ken on that fateful, I think it was a basketball game at Pine Bluff? He said they had to pack up and got out in a hurry. It looked like a riot.
When they won the game there, and the local folks were not happy, and they said, you better get on the bus. So he said, yes, sir, I'm going to get on the bus.
You started in Little League baseball and then graduated to football and basketball?
I moved on to basketball first with Magnolia, and then the 82-83 year, Ken gave up the SAU basketball, and so I started doing that. So that was when I started that, a little over 40 years ago.
Over 40 years ago. You make it sound like just
yesterday.
Just yesterday.
So I started doing that, and then eventually, when Ken finally decided, well, actually before Ken quit doing football, we started carrying SAU baseball. That was about around 89, 90. And then followed up in 97, I took over SAU football. So by that time, I was already doing Magnolia football, so I started doing both.
You've done SAU for so long and so well, they inducted you into their Hall of Fame in 2012 for meritorious service.
Yeah.
And that must have been
They officially hit the bottom of the barrel in 2012.
I don't think so. It's good to have you in there. And then I think you were telling me they also recognized you on the 40th year.
They did. Last year, I guess, was my 40th season for SAU.
You had a visitor to the press box.
Dr. Berry and Coach Browning, the AD, slipped into the studio, and see, I can't hear what's going on in the.
You got the headphones.
Yeah, Jeff Harrington's in the other room doing the PA
in the middle of everybody.
He's in there talking about me, but I'm not listening because I got headphones on, and I don't know what's going on. All I know is all of a sudden people are looking at me. Everybody's turned around in the stands looking at me, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? Well, then here comes Dr. Berry and Coach Browning into the studio, or into our booth, and I turned about, I don't know how many shades of red.
The nice thing about radio, though, nobody ever sees
nobody sees that. That's right. That's right. But I mean, I'm very honored, but.
Well, you worked that hard, that long, it deserves recognition. And
that's pretty much what it means. I'm old.
Oh, yeah, you're old. But you worked with some great people. You mentioned Jeff Harrington, Harold Jameson, some other folks.
I finally got Harold Jameson on the radio.
Oh, you did?
Harold did newspaper work for so many years.
I worked with him at the Banner News. Yeah. He was a source of information, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he we miss him. He had so much.
If you had a question about an old game or something, he
knew the answer, and so finally, I don't remember how many years back, when he was still with us, I said I was doing our focus program, and I said, well, Harold, we need to get you on the radio. You have never been on the radio all these years. I'm going to get you on the radio. And he started telling stories. The program was 15 minutes long. And
how'd you get his reduced to 15 minutes?
I mean, we got 15 minutes worth, but then when I got finished talking and stopped the recorder, he kept talking. We kept telling stories back and forth, and and so I said, well, I'm turning the recorder back on. So I did. So I do have some of that saved. So
what were some of the biggest things you remember? Maybe some of the biggest events you covered in this 40 years?
The construction of the lake, I think was one I really enjoyed. Probably the biggest thing I remember news-wise for Magnolia over all those years was, remember what was it? Hurricane Katrina and Rita.
That's right.
All the people coming up and staying with us in Magnolia for so many years, and there were so many things
for a week
going
or more.
on.
I know our church
we were doing
involved.
a lot of stuff on the radio with that. And all the churches,
the whole community,
the community really jumped in there
and helped folks out. And a lot of several of those folks stayed on here in Magnolia.
They did. I every now and then I'll run into somebody, and sometimes it's obvious if it's a Cajun.
Oh yeah,
and you'll say, "Well, you remember Katrina? I stayed when I came up for Katrina."
Yeah.
So I'm not going through that again. So they just decided to stay. So we're glad to have you. So
man. Some of the biggest sports events. What have you covered? What are the games that stand out the most?
The biggest game, I'm good luck for 1 year. When I started basketball, I told you it was 82, 83. For SAU basketball, they went to the NAIA national tournament that year. They won the NAIA District 17 tournament, went to the national tournament.
Wow.
My first year.
Oh, your first year?
My first year. Didn't do it again for a while. They did do it one more time.
Yeah.
But then my first year of doing SAU baseball, they went to the NAIA national tournament in Idaho. And then my first year of doing SAU football, they went to the NCAA postseason. Now they got beat their first game, but they made the postseason. It was the first time ever in the NCAA era. So like I said, I'm good luck for 1 year.
You need
After
to,
that, not
you
so
need
much.
to sign up to do their soccer games. Maybe that'll help them have a great soccer
season. Good for 1 year.
For 1 year. For 1 year.
1 year.
So you've been in Magnolia over 40 years on the air?
Yeah, well, on the air since 78. So I've been on the air, not doing sports, but on the air since 1978. Yeah.
I don't do
so
math.
That'd be 45 years ago.
Wow.
Next month, 45 years.
Wow. Do you ever think about retiring? You're almost my age.
I was only 2 years old when I moved.
Oh yeah, That's it. You ever think about hanging up the headphones?
I do. I think about it way more often than I used to. I know.
Hey, here's what somebody told me. They said, you got 2 lines on a graph. When you have enough and when you have had enough. And when those 2 lines intersect, that's when it's time to retire.
Well, it's very close, I think. I think it's very close to happening. I remember years ago when Ken retired, and maybe even before that, they said, I don't remember living around here when Ken Sibley was not on the radio.
Oh, yeah, he was the voice of Magnolia, wasn't he?
And then so somewhere, I don't know, in the last few years or something, saying, I don't remember a time
when Dan
that
Gregory
you weren't on the radio. And, there are moments in life where you realize, man, I'm old. That was one of them right there.
Yeah. Your body begins to give you subtle hints also that, so what does the future hold for you?
I don't know, but, I've lived in Magnolia. The one thing people ask me, well, when you do retire, are you going to move back to Missouri or are you going to stay here? And my family all lives in Missouri, but all my friends from Missouri,
You've outlived a lot of
them.
them.
We've lost a lot of them. We've lost contact. So, my
and you built a home here. You know people. If you need something, you know where to get it. And how to get.
Love living here, and I'll have more time on my hands that I can.
You can fish
go back
more.
And forth, and I can go see my family.
Do you think that when you retire, you might change your name back to
my real name?
Your real name?
Well, I never really I never changed it really.
Oh,
I'm kind of like, people. Me and John Wayne, they put us in the same sentence a lot.
Well, I can see why.
His name was Marion Morrison, and I don't think, or at least what I was told, he never officially changed his name to John Wayne. So and I never did either.
So you still got it on your social security and things.
There's still a lot of people in Magnolia that know my real name.
Does it ever get confusing? Like if you give blood or if you get a driver's license, do they?
At times, but for the most part, I just pretty much answer to either name.
What's the other name?
The other name. You want to know it now?
Sure. Let's hear the other name. Let's hear the other name. We've gotten to the end of the broadcast. We might as well hear
Dennis Niederer.
Dennis Niederer.
You've heard of Michael Federer, the tennis player.
Right.
He's Swiss, and so my name also with the on the end of it is.
So are you Swiss?
My relative. On my dad's side, my great grandfather moved to America from Switzerland.
Really?
As a matter of fact, I was on vacation last month
in Switzerland,
and in Missouri, and I actually visited his gravesite, which I had not done in all these years. And somebody said, "Well, he's buried right over in that cemetery."
That was your great grandfather.
That's my great grandfather. Yes,
that's not long ago.
It's on my dad's side, and then my mother's side, I think, came from. I don't know the history as well there as I do, but Niederer is my real name, and Gregory is my middle name.
Oh, so it was Dennis Gregory Niederer.
Funny thing, I don't know how much time you got left, but I walk in, and Ken and I guess Mr. Bigley are there with me. I walk in my first day at work. They say, "Okay, come on in. You're going on the air right now."
Holy cow!
And then they asked me a question that I had never considered. Are you going to use your real name, or are you going to use an alias? And I said, I don't know. I really don't know. So all I knew is in Spanish class, my Spanish teacher called me Danielle instead. She said there was no Spanish word for Dennis. which I've got a lot of Hispanic friends now. They say, "Oh, yes, there is." But anyway, that's what she told me. So I went by Danielle in Spanish class, and Gregory was my middle name. So somehow that just popped up quick.
The first day you picked Dan Gregory.
Yeah, I mean, like literally minutes or seconds before I opened the mic and went on the air.
Wow. And it stuck. And people know you and call you that out on the street. So now a lot of people don't know me. Most people don't know me by my real name, other than my insurance guy and the people I go to church with. Funny thing, I go to, because everybody at church called me Dennis. They all knew me as Dennis. Because, I mean, you register at church with your real name and all that. Yeah. And so they'd say, your picture was in the paper. With a different name under
it? Yeah, but they had your name wrong. And I said, well, those newspaper people, they just don't get anything right.
And I intended to mention your church involvement because you are involved.
I'm involved, at Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And involved with the Knights of Columbus through that. Which is a men's organization. And do some things through that. Not as, you say I'm active. I'm, at that point,
I see your name all the time.
At that point, I need to scale back a little more. Well, I am the head, the Grand Knight of the Knights of Columbus. But, that's only because nobody else would take that job.
I've seen jobs like that too. Dan, you and I could talk for another. We've run through 30 minutes in a hurry. But we haven't told any. We have not even scratched the surface.
We haven't told any really good Ken Sibley stories yet. Will I save them for another day?
We'll have to do another episode in which we will share what was Ken Sibley really like. Yeah. What was it really like on the radio in the early days? And we'll have to get back to those one day. Dennis, Dan, whatever you call yourself.
I do have some people that call me Dennis Dan also.
Dennis Dan. Yeah. Thanks for your time. I've enjoyed the broadcast. I think this will be one of the hits.
Well, I hope we'll see how many people actually do the hit on there, and we'll find out.
We will find out. We will find out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. I'm honored to be on your.
You're one of. You're number 30.
Number 30.
Number 30.
Wow.
Number 30.
Okay.
That's coming on up.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for listening to Life in LA. Feel free to contact us at steveford@gmail.com if you have a suggestion for a future topic. And as always, tell others about this podcast and share it on your favorite social media. You've been listening to Life in LA, a production of Steve Ford Photography.